know why celebrities and wealthy people in the entertainment industry like to practice planting life foundation? Planting life foundation, also known as a living person's tomb, means that when a person is still alive, they first bury their hair, clothes, and other personal items in a geomantic treasure land. These items are used to replace themselves to absorb the luck of the geomantic treasure land, so as to improve their own fortune. Planting life foundation is very popular in many regions around the world and is almost an open secret. Many celebrities and even business tycoons have done it. Hong Kong's gossip entertainment magazines have also reported on it. The king of gambling in Hong Kong, for example, had a planting life foundation done by the top geomancer in Hong Kong. Not only did he extend his life by 20 years, but also the fortune of his family has been smooth sailing. Of course, fortune is determined by heaven. This method of stealing fortune from heaven, once backfired, will have serious consequences. Some very popular Hong Kong stars suddenly died young, and their deaths were very strange. Some of them were due to this kind of backlash. The story we are going to tell next is also about planting life foundation, but it is much more sinister than the ordinary one. In fact, the planting life foundation that Hong Kong artists use to change their fortune now can only be regarded as a heretical method handed down. The real planting life foundation is not just about enhancing fortune. It is actually a secret technique for prolonging life. The story takes place in a place in Datong, Shanxi, where small coal mines are concentrated. The coal industry is inherently sinister because it involves taking things from underground. From the perspective of yin and yang, the things underground belong to the underworld. Mining coal in the human world is crossing the line, so coal mines often have accidents. When it comes to coal mine accidents, the first thing people think of is gas explosions or collapses. In fact, the most serious problem in small coal mines is not gas explosions. As long as good ventilation is ensured and no smoking is allowed inside, it is unlikely to explode in both large and small coal mines. What small coal mines are most afraid of are some inexplicable and sinister things. Sometimes when mining coal, they can't dig any further. Steel bars as thick as wrists break when driven in, and there are even cases of blood spurting out. People have also dug up copper coffins, welded shut, three-eyed iron monkeys, petrified monster skeletons, and some have dug out fleshy urns. The miners thought they were antiques and managed to get them out with great difficulty, but when they asked an expert to take a look, they would be extremely angry. The fleshy urn, also known as burial in a vat, was used in ancient times to hold the bodies of monks. But no one knows why this fleshy urn would appear dozens of meters deep in the coal mine. Anyway, when encountering sinister things, people need to invite someone to perform a ritual to dispel the evil. If the dispelling is not done well, as many people as go down will die. If dispelling the evil still doesn't work, then convicted felons are sent down, with murderers taking the lead, using extreme fierceness to counter the evil energy, and even the most ferocious evil energy can be dispelled. This incident originated from the matter of dispelling evil in a small coal mine. In Datong, Shanxi, there is an area where small coal mines are concentrated. One day, an old lame man came here at first. No one could tell that this old lame man was an expert. He lived in a small shed next to the coal mine, usually wearing a greasy gown with a big pipe in his mouth, and making extremely vulgar jokes with the old miners. He also liked to gamble and preferred to go to the most low-level underground casinos. People there would bare their necks, hold a handful of blackened banknotes, and shout and scream desperately as if possessed. He not only liked to gamble but also liked to watch others gamble. When he lost money, he would curse and jump up and down. When he won, he would invite the old miners to drink, lie under the old willow tree with his yellow teeth bared, and tell dirty jokes. However, from another perspective, perhaps he just liked this noisy atmosphere. Maybe he had been lonely for too long, or the ascetic life was too hard, so he yearned for this earthly life. Not only did everyone not believe he was an expert, but even the coal bosses didn't believe him. But he wasn't in a hurry, and didn't make a fuss. Later, the old lame man accidentally gave some advice to a small coal mine several times, helping it avoid several disasters. Only then did the coal bosses start to believe him and consult him with humility. As a result, they learned that the old lame man came here to repay a life. As we said before, if something sinister happens in some coal mines, they need to dispel the evil. The so-called dispelling the evil means pouring in chicken blood or dog blood. Anyway, the blood of various animals will do. Blood has the most evil repelling power, and using it can scare away the sinister things underground. If these kinds of blood still can't dispel the evil, then human lives are needed to suppress it. There were reports before that some people abducted many homeless people and fools to work in small coal mines. In fact, the small coal mines didn't abduct them to work. The coal mine industry is a highly profitable one, and coal bosses don't care about the money for these few laborers. They caught these people to dispel the evil. At that time, a coal boss had a sinister incident in his mind. All kinds of methods had been tried, but none worked. The sycophant under the coal boss bought a 5 or 6 year old stupid child and wanted to trap the child in the mine. All those who can become coal bosses are not kind-hearted people. But for some reason, perhaps seeing the innocent smile of this child or suddenly thinking of his own young son at home, this coal boss suddenly felt compassion. He then took a knife and made a cut on his wrist. Blood flowed out instantly. He covered his hand and said, "Isn't it just human blood that is needed? Then use mine. I don't believe I can't suppress this damned thing." After the big boss set an example, his subordinates had to follow suit, gritted their teeth and cut their wrists to drip blood down. Later, whether it was because the coal boss had a strong murderous aura, or because a lot of blood had great power, the small coal mine had no more problems since then, and soon high-quality coal was produced. The coal boss also became a well-known rich man in the local area. Later, the coal boss thought this child was also a lucky sign, so he gave the trafficker a sum of money, asked clearly where the child was stolen from, and then sent his men to send the child back. In fact, this child was the son of the old lame man. At that time, the old lame man asked his men to bring a message to the coal boss, saying that when his son could support himself a few years later, he would come to repay his life. This time, the old lame man came to repay his life. As the ancients said, a true gentleman's promise is as valuable as 1,000 gold. The old lame man kept his word and really came to repay his life after 13 years. The coal boss was almost moved to tears. He told the old lame man that it was good that he came, and there was no need to repay his life. He asked the old lame man to stay and be his feng shui consultant. But the old lame man shook his head and said that he had calculated the coal boss's lifespan 13 years ago and knew that the coal boss only had 13 years left. If he didn't come, it would be too late. Although the coal boss respected him, he didn't quite believe it. He was only 50 years old in good health and had just had a physical examination at the beginning of the year with all indicators normal. How could he die so soon? The old lame man said, "Your glabella is black, and the middle of your eyebrows is broken. This is a sign of a short life." There is no mistake, seeing that the coal boss still didn't believe it. The old lame man said that the sycophant beside him was also running out of time, and it would be the day after tomorrow. The sycophant laughed when he heard this and said, "Then tell me how I will die." The old lame man firmly said that he would be drowned. The sycophant said, "Okay, since it is like this, I'll ask the boss for 2 days off to go home and prepare for my funeral." Then the sycophant really went back to his hometown. In fact, he was really scared, because the old lame man had given advice to the coal mine several times before, and none of them had failed. Since the old lame man said he would die the day after tomorrow, he had to take precautions. Since the old lame man said he would be drowned, he went back to his hometown. There wasn't even a pond within 10 miles around his hometown. He wanted to see how he could drown himself. When he got home, only his over 70-year-old father was at home. His father was in good health and herded dozens of sheep outside every day. Looking at his elderly father and thinking about how he had been living a life of debauchery outside, never giving his father any money, and never even taking his father out for a stroll, he really felt unfilial. Since he rarely stayed at home for 2 days, he turned off his phone and accompanied his father well. Just like this, he stayed at home for 2 days without any problems. He thought that as long as he got through the last day, everything would be fine. Since he had nothing to do, he simply went herding sheep with his father. Suddenly, it rained on the way of herding sheep. Although he was a little worried, seeing that the rain wasn't heavy and the place where they were herding sheep was on a small hillside without even a puddle. He didn't take it seriously. As a result, a wild animal suddenly rushed down from the mountain. It was either a fox or a lynx. The flock of sheep immediately panicked. The leading old ram rammed into him and knocked him to the ground. There was a small mud pit on the ground, which happened to accumulate a basin of rainwater. He fell right into this puddle and tried to get up, but the flock of sheep crowded on him like a boiling pot. When his old father rushed over and desperately dispersed the flock of sheep, he found that his son had been drowned in this basin of water. When the bad news came, the coal boss was really scared. He invited the old lame man overnight to discuss countermeasures. The old lame man said that the sycophant had brought this on himself and couldn't blame others. The fox he met on the mountain was reincarnated from a woman who had been waiting for him there for several years. That woman was his mistress before. Later, because of jealousy, she wanted to expose his affairs. So the sycophant held her head in a basin of water and drowned her to death. That is why there was this retribution. He comforted the coal boss, saying that although the coal boss wasn't a kind-hearted person, fortunately, he hadn't done too many bad things, so his life could still be extended. The coal boss was very nervous and asked him how to practice this planting life foundation. The old lame man told him that this planting life foundation was actually an ancient secret technique. However, it wasn't the real planting life foundation written in the Hong Kong gossip newspapers. It was somewhat similar to Zhuge Liang's method of prolonging life with the 7-star lamp, and the secret method of becoming an immortal with a fake wooden body. It belonged to a great magic of stealing life from heaven, commonly known as deceiving the king of hell. Why is it called deceiving the king of hell? Simply put, when a person has a premonition that they are going to die, they dig a grave and bury themselves in it, deceiving the king of hell into thinking that they are really dead, so that their name will be crossed out in the book of life and death. After getting through this life, threatening not, they can extend their life for a period. That is, they can live for another 1 or 2 years. This is an ancient secret technique that has been passed down for thousands of years. The most famous one is Zhuge Liang's prolonging life with the 7-star lamp. That was a typical case of deceiving the king of hell. Even earlier in ancient times, Zhangzi prolonged the life of his disciple, Wuji, with the technique of suppressing stars, deceiving both the king of hell and the diviner King Wen. Finally, Wuji became a general. The technique of suppressing stars mentioned here is also a typical case of deceiving the king of hell. Later, in all dynasties in China, there were experts who could perform the magic of deceiving the king of hell. Not to mention the emperors, the high-ranking officials, and the rich also tried their best to exhaust their family wealth to prolong their lives. During the Republic of China, the minister Liang Shi also held such a religious ceremony, which caused a great stir at that time. He told the coal boss that this matter should be done as soon as possible and must be very secret. It would be best to carry it out tonight. He emphasized that prolonging life is stealing life from heaven. The slightest mistake could lead to instant annihilation. So he must find the person he trusted the most in the world. The coal boss was worth billions. Money blinded his heart. Even his wife and children were unreliable. His old mother had to preside over this matter in person. At night, the coal boss dug a pit himself and then lay down in it. The old lame man would give the coal boss a fake death drug. After lying down, the coal boss would stop breathing as if he were really dead. Raw rice and straw were used to cover the human aura, and 2 lamps were sold, guiding lamps. As long as the lamps didn't go out, the soul would remain. As long as this day passed, the coal boss would be considered a dead person in the eyes of the king of hell, and could live for another 12 years. So the key to this ritual was that the 2 lamps must not go out, and no one should be allowed to disturb. In those days, Zhuge Liang's prolonging life with the 7-star lamp was actually planting life foundation. But later it was interrupted, and even the greatest immortals couldn't save him. The coal boss was still very nervous and asked if he needed to bathe, change clothes, burn incense, kowtow in advance, donate money to the temple, or release 100,000 fish. The old lame man shook his head and said that those were just small tricks to deceive the common people, and were actually useless. The coal boss asked again if the lamps would go out. The old lame man smiled and said, "I've been waiting for 13 years for today. I will protect you personally." As long as I am alive, the lamps will be on. Even if I die, the lamps will still be on. The coal boss was also a tough guy. Since things had come to this, there was nothing more to say. He hugged the old lame man heavily and then quickly went to prepare for the funeral. That night, the coal boss lay in the grave. His old mother personally lit the oil lamps, scattered raw rice and hay, and then sat aside to keep watch for her son. The old lame man waved his hand, asking her to go into the house to rest, saying that there would be strange celestial phenomena later, and he was afraid that it would scare the old lady. The old lady nodded and turned to leave, but when she just reached the door, she came back. She walked over slowly, knelt down beside the old lame man with a plop, and tears streamed down her face. "Master, you must save my son. As long as you can save him, we don't want all our property. We can give it all to you." The old lame man waved his hand and said, "Old lady, since I've received your kneeling, I will do my best. Even if I die, I will ensure your son's safety later. If you see anything, don't interfere." Before she left, he added, "Your son has a life of great wealth and honor. But after this incident, his wealth and honor will be exhausted. Don't do the coal business in the future." The old lady remembered his words, thanked him profusely, and then backed out. The old lame man sat cross-legged beside him with his eyes half closed. This kind of life-prolonging method seizes the vitality of heaven and earth and is not tolerated by heaven. After the magic starts, there will be various strange phenomena. Those with kindness will come to repay kindness, and those with grudges will come to avenge. The living beings that the life-prolonging person has harmed before will come to obstruct. During the Republic of China, a powerful figure in northeast China also invited an expert to prolong his life. He invited more than 100 feng shui masters to sit in to block the vengeful spirits. Unexpectedly, his two sons fought over the family property and accidentally stepped on the soul-guiding lamp during the fight, resulting in the failure of the magic. At that time, more than half of the more than 100 feng shui masters died on the spot, and even the expert who performed the Planting Life Foundation died. At midnight, the candle flame flickered a few times. The old lame man slightly opened his eyes and snorted coldly. Then the light of the lamp returned to normal. Suddenly, there came the meowing of cats around. One meow followed another, and soon there were hundreds of meows. The meows were shrill and long, as if hundreds of ghosts were crying. The black-backed German shepherds raised in the villa all went crazy and howled wildly. The old lady was worried about her son and had been guarding outside. Hearing the meowing of hundreds of cats at night, she was also terrified. She quickly came in to take a look. When she came in, she found two cats standing upright. Their fur was all fluffed up. One was as black as ink, and the other was as white as snow. The two cats were growling at the old lame man in a low voice. The old lady didn't even dare to breathe. Soon the two cats started to attack the old lame man. These two cats were agile and vicious, like two little leopards. One claw scratched on the sandalwood coffee table, leaving a deep scratch mark. Fortunately, the old lame man had profound skills. He gently tapped a few times with a bamboo stick and blocked the two cats, looking quite relaxed. After this struggle for a while, suddenly one cat let out a howl and pounced towards the old lame man, not retreating even as the bamboo stick swept over, while the other cat took the opportunity to pounce onto the lampstand, but it seemed as if there was a piece of glass in front of the lampstand. The cat hit it hard and was bounced back. The old lame man shook his head, kicked the white cat away with one foot, and with another palm, knocked the black cat over. At this time, he said, "When will the cycle of revenge end? How about I release you from your suffering tonight and help you find a good family to be reincarnated into?" The two cats stared at him fiercely, scratching the floor hard with their claws, causing the blue stone slabs to break and scatter. Later, the white cat suddenly went berserk. It leaped up suddenly, and with one claw ripped open its own chest and abdomen. A mass of blood and flesh splattered onto the lampstand. The originally indestructible lampstand actually cracked at the sound, as a puddle of blood and flesh covered the lampstand and was about to extinguish the soul-guiding lamp. In a flash, the old lame man, like lightning, used 2 fingers to pinch the wick. The wick burned in his hand, and instantly a smell of charring filled the air. The old lame man said coldly, "He owes you 2 lives, and I'll repay them with 2 fingers. In the future, you have to serve me for 10 years to pay off the debt." The 2 cats looked at the old lame man in shock, then shook their heads and let out a few more fierce growls before finally retreating. The old lady rushed in quickly to bandage him, but the old lame man shook his head and said, "This fire must not go out. If it goes out, her son will die." The old lady burst into tears and thanked him profusely. The old lame man smiled and said, "Old sister, you feel sorry for your son, and I feel sorry for mine. Tit for tat, 2 fingers for 2 lives. We've actually gained something." The old lady then asked what kind of resentment the 2 cats had. The old lame man sighed and said, "These 2 cats are actually your grandsons. Your son was busy with his career back then and aborted the first pregnancy. It was a pair of twins, and they were already over 6 months old and had developed spiritual intelligence. They resented their father's cruelty and came here to take revenge this time." Just like that, the candle flame burned in the old lame man's hand. His 2 fingers had turned into 2 pieces of charcoal. It was not until the rooster crowed and the sky turned white that the coal boss in the grave turned over and finally woke up. The old lame man then extinguished the candle and said that the stealing of life was successful. However, less than a cycle of 12 years, 2 years had to be returned to the pair of twins. So the coal boss could still live for 10 years. The coal boss listened to what his old mother said about what happened last night and saw his 2 fingers burned into charcoal. His knees went weak and he knelt on the ground. The old lame man laughed heartily and said, "Unexpectedly, I managed to save your life this time." He then told the coal boss to close down the coal mine and live a good life. After this ordeal, the coal boss had a complete awakening and quickly closed down the coal mine. Unexpectedly, later, the authorities began to rectify the small coal mines, and many of his peers were sent to prison. He had escaped another disaster. 10 years later, the former coal boss had become a well-known great philanthropist. At his funeral, a large number of people came to pay their respects. At the funeral, there was a slovenly old Taoist who had only 8 fingers. He laughed heartily at the funeral, sat on a bench, and grabbed the wine and meat with his bare hands to eat and drink. Strangely, the host's family did not make things difficult for him because of his behavior. The great philanthropist's old mother personally entertained him, was respectful to him, and obeyed his every word. The old Taoist also brought 2 good-looking boys, one wearing black clothes and the other wearing white clothes. The 2 boys showed a look of disgust towards the deceased great philanthropist, but in the end, they reluctantly offered incense and kowtowed 3 times to the old lady. The old Taoist drank a few more cups of wine, laughed 3 times, and then left swaggeringly. No one has seen him since. Well, that is the end of our story for this issue. Thank you, dear friends, for watching. See you next time.